I always thought my life with Clara was a quiet masterpiece, a canvas painted with steady strokes of trust and routine. 20 years married, 3 kids grown and scattered to their own corners of the world, and a house that hummed with the soft rhythm of our shared existence. She was the kind of woman who made you believe in permanence. Dark hair streaked with silver, eyes that still crinkled when she laughed, and a voice that could soothe any storm in my head. I worked as an architect, designing homes for other people while ours stood as my proudest creation. Clara taught piano, her fingers dancing over keys in a way that felt like a secret language only I understood. We were comfortable, predictable, happy, or so I thought. It started with the smallest crack. A Thursday evening, late September, when the air carried that first bite of autumn. I came home from a site visit, my boots dusted with construction grit, expecting the usual. Clara at the piano, a pot of soup simmering, the faint glow of our life together. Instead, the house was silent. No music, no warmth, just an empty kitchen and a note on the counter. Out with a friend. Back late. I stared at it, the handwriting unmistakably hers but the tone foreign. Clara didn't have friends she met at night. Her circle was small church ladies, the occasional former student. I brushed it off, ate leftovers alone, and went to bed with the hum of unease in my chest. The next morning, she was there, brewing coffee like nothing had happened. Her smile was bright, maybe too bright, and she kissed my cheek with a quickness that felt rehearsed. "How was your night?" I asked, casual as I could manage. "Oh, fine," she said, stirring sugar into her mug. "Just catching up with someone from the old days." She didn't elaborate, and I didn't press. But the seed was planted, a tiny thorn under my skin. Over the weeks, those out with a friend nights multiplied, once a week, then twice. Her excuses grew vaguer, her returns later. I'd lie awake, listening for the garage door, counting the minutes until her footsteps padded up the stairs. She'd slide into bed, smelling faintly of lavender and something else. Something sharp, unfamiliar. I'm not a suspicious man by nature. Doubt isn't my default. But the architect in me knows a structure can collapse from a single weak beam. So I started watching. Her phone, once left carelessly on the counter, now stayed glued to her hand. She'd laugh at messages I couldn't see, her fingers tapping replies with a speed I'd never noticed before. One night, I caught her in the backyard, whispering into the receiver, her voice low and urgent. "No, not yet," I heard her say before she saw me and hung up, claiming it was a student's parent. The lie hung between us, thick and sour, but I swallowed it. I didn't want to believe what my gut was screaming. By November, the cracks had widened into fissures. Clara's absences weren't just frequent, they were deliberate. She'd leave with a breezy, "Don't wait up," her purse slung over her shoulder, her lipstick a shade redder than usual. I'd sit in the living room, blueprints spread across the coffee table, pretending to work while the clock ticked past midnight. The house felt hollow without her, like a design I'd miscalculated, all angles and no heart. I told myself it was nothing, an overactive imagination, a midlife crisis of my own making. But the signs piled up like blueprints rejected for flaws. One evening, I found a receipt in her coat pocket. A diner 2 towns over, time-stamped 11:47 p.m., 2 coffees and a slice of pie. She'd been home by 12:30 that night, which meant whoever she'd met was close, too close. I held the paper, my hands trembling, and pictured her across from someone, laughing, sharing that pie. The image gnawed at me, a slow grind against my ribs. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed proof, something concrete to brace against the storm building inside me. I started tracking her. It felt dirty, like I was betraying her by doubting her, but the alternative, blind trust, was crumbling. I'd note the mileage on her car before she left, then check it when she returned. 30 miles round trip, consistent as a blueprint. I drove the route myself one night, following the path she'd taken, and found the diner, a squat, neon-lit place called Rosie's. I sat in the parking lot, watching couples come and go, wondering which face had shared her booth. The next time she went out, I followed. She didn't notice my truck trailing 2 cars behind, her headlights cutting through the dark. She pulled into Rosie's, stepped out in a coat I'd bought her, and disappeared inside. I waited, my breath fogging the windshield, until she emerged an hour later, arm linked with a man I recognized. Tom Hargrove, our realtor from 15 years back, when we'd bought the house. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a salesman's grin I'd always found too polished. He'd flirted with Clara then, a harmless tease I'd laughed off. Now he held her close, her head tilted toward him as they walked to his car. They didn't kiss, didn't embrace, but the intimacy was unmistakable. A language of glances and touches I'd thought belonged only to us. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, as they drove off together. I didn't follow, couldn't. The truth was a beam snapping in my chest, and I needed time to shore up the wreckage. Tom Hargrove. The name echoed in my skull like a hammer on steel. I remembered him clearly now. His slick suits, his easy charm, the way he'd lingered too long shaking Clara's hand when we closed on the house. Back then, it was nothing, a footnote in our story. Now, it was the cornerstone of a betrayal I couldn't unsee. I drove home that night, the diner fading in my rearview, and sat in the garage with the engine off, staring at the wall. Clara came home at 1:12 a.m., her footsteps light as if she could tiptoe past the truth. She slipped into bed, her back to me, and I lay there, eyes open, mapping the fault lines of our life. The next day, I dug deeper. I'm not a detective, but I know how to find answers. Blueprints teach you that. I searched Tom's name online, piecing together his life like a floor plan. Divorced, no kids, still selling houses with that same grin plastered across his website. His office was 20 miles from us, matching the mileage I tracked. I found his address, a condo in a sleek building downtown, and cross-referenced it with Clara's late-night patterns. It fit too well. I called his office, pretending to be a client, and his assistant confirmed he was out showing properties most evenings. Properties, I thought bitterly, or my wife. I needed more. I went through Clara's things, her purse, her desk, her car. In the glove box, I found a parking stub from his building dated a week ago. In her purse, a folded note. Thursday 10. Can't wait. No signature, but the handwriting wasn't hers. My stomach twisted, a slow churn of acid and rage. I photographed everything, building my case like a structure I'd present to a client. Each piece locked into place, confirming what I'd seen at Rosie's. She was meeting him, regularly, deliberately, in a way that mocked every vow we'd made. Confronting her felt impossible. Not because I feared her lies, but because I feared my own reaction. I'm a steady man, a planner, not prone to outbursts. But this was a demolition I couldn't control. So I waited, watched, let the anger harden into something precise. Clara noticed nothing or pretended not to. She played the piano, cooked dinner, smiled at me over coffee, all while carrying on with Tom. I played along, my voice calm, my hands steady, but inside, I was drafting a revenge as meticulous as any design I'd ever drawn. December rolled in, cold and sharp, and Clara's routine solidified. Thursday nights were sacred to her now, a ritual I wasn't part of. She'd leave at 7 o'clock, claiming a student's recital or a friend's birthday. Her excuses flimsy but delivered with that same bright smile. I'd nod, kiss her forehead, and watch her go, my mind already tracing her path to Tom's condo. I'd stopped following her. Didn't need to. The evidence was a foundation I'd built, unshakable. Receipts, notes, the mileage, the way her eyes darted when I asked about her day. She thought I was blind, and I let her. I started planning then, not just observing. Revenge isn't a word I'd used before. It felt too dramatic, too unmeasured. But what else do you call it when your world's been gutted? When the woman you've built everything for hands your life to someone else? I wanted it to hurt, not quick and messy, but slow, deliberate, a collapse she'd feel in her bones. Tom, too. He'd played his part, smug and oblivious, and I'd make sure he paid. I spent nights in my study, blueprints pushed aside, sketching something new. Not a house, but a reckoning. First, I tested her. Over dinner one night, I mentioned Tom casually. Ran into Hargrove downtown. I lied, watching her fork pause midair. He's still selling houses, looks the same. You remember him? Her face tightened, just for a second, before she laughed. Oh, vaguely. Pushy guy, right? She changed the subject, but the crack in her voice was enough. She knew I'd seen something, even if she didn't know how much. I kept my tone light, my questions vague, planting seeds of doubt. Funny how people pop back up, I'd say, or wonder what he's up to these days. She'd squirm, her answers shorter, her laughter thinner. Then I went practical. I opened a new bank account, siphoning small amounts from our joint savings. Nothing she'd notice yet. I hired a guy, a private investigator I found through a contractor friend, to tail her and Tom. His reports came in thick envelopes. Photos of them at Rosie's, her car parked outside his condo, the two of them walking arm in arm under streetlights. One shot showed her laughing, head thrown back, a joy I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't jealousy that hit me. It was fury, cold and clear. She'd given him what was mine, and I'd take it all back, piece by piece. Christmas loomed, and Clara's charade grew bolder. She'd hum carols while wrapping gifts, her fingers brushing mine as if nothing had shifted. I played along, hung lights, carved the turkey, but every touch felt like a lie I was choking down. The investigator's latest report sat locked in my desk. Tom had taken her to a cabin upstate, a weekend she'd explained away as visiting her sister. The photos showed a fireplace, her silhouette against the glow, his arm around her waist. I stared at them until my eyes burned, memorizing every detail. She'd come home Sunday night, cheeks flushed, claiming the cold had gotten to her. I'd nodded, poured her tea, and said nothing. The plan took shape then, a design as intricate as any I'd drafted. I'd dismantle their world, not with confrontation, not yet, but with precision. Step 1, exposure. I contacted Tom's ex-wife, Diane, under the guise of needing real estate advice. She was sharp, bitter, still raw from their split. Over coffee, I steered the conversation to Clara, dropping hints about a friend who'd seen Tom with someone new. Diane's eyes narrowed, her voice tight. He's a snake, she said. Always was. If he's with someone, she's welcome to him, until he moves on. I left her with a seed of her own, knowing she'd dig. Step 2, finances. I moved more money, drained half our savings into my account, and canceled Clara's credit cards, claiming a security breach. She grumbled but didn't suspect. Step 3, Tom's career. I knew developers, clients he relied on. A few calls, a few whispers about his unreliable habits, and his listings started drying up. He'd feel it soon, a slow bleed. But the real cruelty was still forming, a final stroke I hadn't inked yet. I wanted them to unravel, to turn on each other, to taste the ruin they'd built. And I'd watch, steady as ever, as their foundation cracked. January arrived, brittle and gray, and the house felt like a blueprint I'd outgrown. Clara moved through it with a distracted grace, her mind elsewhere, her smiles mechanical. She didn't know I'd seen the cabin photos, didn't know I'd heard her whisper Tom's name in her sleep one night. A soft, unguarded slip that landed like a brick through glass. I'd lain there, staring at the ceiling, her breath warm against my shoulder, and felt the last shred of doubt burn away. This wasn't a fling. It was a theft, a deliberate carving out of me from her life, and I'd make sure they both paid for it. The investigator kept feeding me updates, each one a nail in the frame I was building. Tom had taken her to a jewelry store downtown, a small place with gaudy window displays. The receipt, slipped to me in a manila envelope, showed a bracelet, silver, engraved, $300. She'd worn it home that night, claiming it was a gift from a student's parent. I'd nodded, traced its delicate links with my eyes, and said nothing. The lie was a thread I'd pull later when the time was right. For now, I let her wear it, let her think she'd woven her story tight enough to hold. Diane, Tom's ex, was proving useful. After our coffee chat, she'd called me twice, her voice sharp with suspicion. "He's up to something," she'd said. Fishing for details, I fed her in crumbs. I told her I'd heard rumors about a married woman, someone local, and watched her connect the dots. She didn't know Clara, not yet, but she knew Tom's patterns: late nights, sudden business trips, the charm that masked his rot. I hinted at a diner, a condo, enough to send her sniffing. If she confronted him, it'd rattle his cage, and I wanted him rattled. Meanwhile, I tightened the screws. Clara's canceled cards left her scrambling. She'd call the bank, flustered, while I feigned confusion from the next room. "Must be a glitch," I'd say, knowing she couldn't trace it back to me. Our savings dwindled, her half now mine, tucked away in an account she'd never find. She'd frown at the statements, ask vague questions, but I'd shrug, blame the market, and watch her squirm. Tom's business, too, was faltering. My developer friends had spread the word, and his phone stopped ringing. I pictured him pacing his condo, that salesman grin fading, and felt a flicker of satisfaction. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. By February, the air between Clara and me was thick with unspoken fractures. She'd stopped pretending as hard. Her excuses grew lazy, her returns later. One night, she stumbled in at 2 a.m., her coat dusted with snow, her cheeks flushed from more than the cold. "Slipped on ice," she mumbled, avoiding my eyes. I poured her coffee, watched her sip it, and noticed the bracelet glinting on her wrist. "Pretty thing," I said, my voice flat. She froze, then smiled too quickly. "Yeah, the parent was so sweet." I let it hang there, a weight she couldn't shake, and went to bed alone. Diane called again, her tone triumphant. "Caught him," she said. "Saw him at Rosie's with some woman, dark hair, older. You know her." I played dumb, said I'd ask around, but my pulse quickened. She tailed him, snapped blurry photos on her phone, and promised to send them. When they arrived, grainy but unmistakable, I saw Clara's profile, her hand on his arm. Diane didn't have a name yet, but she was close, and I'd nudge her closer. "Sounds messy," I told her. "Maybe you should warn her husband." She laughed, bitter and eager, and I knew she'd take the bait. I escalated then. I hired a locksmith, changed the house locks while Clara was out, and left her old key on the counter. Useless now. When she got home, fumbling at the door, I let her in with a cold, forgot to mention, security upgrade. Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. I added cameras, 2 small, discreet, tucked into corners. Not to catch her, but to unnerve her. She'd glance at them, uneasy, and I'd smile, claiming it was for peace of mind. The money kept moving, our retirement fund, her piano savings, all siphoned to my account. She'd notice soon, but by then, it'd be too late. Tom's world was cracking, too. A client of mine, a big developer, pulled a deal worth 6 figures after I mentioned Tom's sloppy paperwork. His online reviews tanked, anonymous posts, not mine, but I didn't discourage them. I drove by his condo one night, saw his car gone, and wondered if he was with her. The thought didn't sting anymore, it fueled me. I was dismantling them, brick by brick, and the real blow was still coming. March brought rain, endless sheets of it, and Clara's mask started slipping. She'd snap at me over nothing. Burnt toast, a misplaced remote, her patience frayed by the pressure I'd built. The cameras caught her pacing, muttering to herself. Her phone pressed to her ear in hushed, frantic calls. I didn't listen, didn't need to. I knew who was on the other end, knew the bracelet on her wrist was a tether to him. She'd leave for hours, come back soaked and silent, and I'd greet her with a calm that made her flinch. "Rough day?" I'd ask, and she'd nod, avoiding my gaze. Diane was a wildfire now. She tracked Clara's car to our street, pieced it together with a neighbor's gossip, and called me, voice trembling with rage. "It's your wife, isn't it? She's the one." I feigned shock, let her rant, and dropped a single line. "If it's true, I'd want to know." She promised to confront Tom, maybe Clara too, and I thanked her, my tone heavy with fake gratitude. The photos she'd sent were pinned to my study wall. A gallery of betrayal I'd show Clara when the moment was right. But not yet. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in first. The financial noose tightened. Clara tried booking a recital venue, but her card declined, publicly, in front of her students' parents. She came home red-faced, demanded answers. "Bank's a mess," I said, shrugging. "We'll sort it." She didn't push, but her trust was eroding. I sold her piano next, an old upright she'd loved, claiming we needed cash for repairs. A buyer hauled it away while she was out, and I left the empty space like a wound in the living room. She stared at it, speechless, then locked herself in the bedroom. I didn't follow. Let her stew, I thought. Let her feel the loss. Tom's collapse was accelerating. His office lease lapsed, non-payment I heard through a contact, and he'd moved to a cheaper rental, a dingy place across town. His desperation was palpable. He'd called Clara Moore, their hushed talks spilling into the night. I'd hear her whisper from the hall, "We'll figure it out," and smile to myself. They wouldn't. I'd made sure of that. April bloomed, deceptive and bright, but our house was a mausoleum. Clara barely spoke to me now, her eyes hollow, her movements jerky. The missing piano, the locked accounts, the cameras. She knew something was wrong, but not how deep it ran. She'd stopped wearing the bracelet, hid it somewhere I hadn't found. A silent admission of guilt. I didn't care. I had bigger plans, a final design taking shape. The investigator's last report sat on my desk. Tom was broke, borrowing from shady lenders, his charm useless against the ruin I'd engineered. Diane struck then. She showed up at Rosie's, caught them mid-meal, and unleashed a tirade that echoed through the diner. A friend there texted me the details. Plates smashed, Clara fleeing in tears, Tom red-faced and stammering. Diane had screamed about his married whore, named Clara in front of strangers, and left them both reeling. Clara came home that night, mascara streaked, and locked herself in the bathroom. I knocked once, asked if she was okay. "Fine," she croaked, but her voice was a ruin. I let her hide. The shame was hers now, public and raw. I moved the money again, everything left, drained to an offshore account she'd never touch. I sold her car next, a quick deal to a dealership, and left the keys to a junker in its place. "Better mileage?" I told her, watching her face crumple. She didn't argue, she couldn't. Her world was shrinking, and I was the architect of its walls. Tom called her that night, his voice audible through the thin bedroom door. "I can't keep this up," she begged, pleaded, but he hung up. I smiled in the dark, knowing he'd break her soon. The cameras caught her crying the next day, curled on the couch, her phone dead in her hand. I watched the footage later, rewound it, let the sound of her sobs fill the study. It wasn't enough. I wanted more, her pride, her joy, her lies stripped bare. The endgame was close, and I'd play it with the precision of a man who'd built his life on straight lines. The first week of April, Clara unraveled. She'd stopped leaving the house, stopped pretending. The junker sat unused, the cameras tracked her pacing. Her calls to Tom went unanswered. Diane had spread the story. Small-town gossip travels fast, and whispers followed Clara to the grocery store, the church she'd once loved. She'd come home pale, hands shaking, and I'd ask, "Something wrong?" She'd mutter, "Nothing." But her eyes betrayed her. The town knew. Her students' parents canceled lessons, citing personal reasons. She was a ghost in her own life, and I'd made her that way. I struck deeper. I printed the photos, Rosie's, the cabin, the jewelry store, and left them on the kitchen table one morning. No note, just the images stacked like a verdict. She found them when I was at work, and I came home to silence. The photos were gone, but her face was a mask of dread. "We need to talk," she said, voice small. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "About what?" She faltered, tears welling, and tried to lie. "I don't know what those are." I laughed, a cold, hollow sound, and walked away. Let her drown in it, I thought. Let her choke on the truth. Tom was next. I'd found his new address, a cramped apartment with peeling paint, and mailed him a package. Copies of the photos, a note in Clara's handwriting I'd kept. Thursday 10. Can't wait. No signature from me, just enough to twist the knife. He'd know she'd been caught, know I'd seen everything. I pictured him opening it, his salesman facade cracking, and felt the first real warmth in months. He'd dumped her by then. I'd heard her sobbing into the phone, "Please, don't do this." But I wanted him to feel my shadow too. The final piece was ready. I drafted a letter, detailed and brutal, naming them both, their lies, their meetings. I'd send it to her church group, his old clients, our kids. Everyone who'd trusted them. Not yet, though. I'd wait until they thought the worst was over, then drop it like a sledgehammer. Clara sensed it, I think. She'd watch me now, wary, waiting for the blow. I'd smile back, steady and calm, and let her wonder. The architect in me knew. The best designs reveal themselves slowly, and this one would bury them both. Mid-April painted the town in soft greens, but our house was a tomb of shadows. Clara had shrunk into herself, a hollow echo of the woman I'd married. She'd stopped cooking, stopped playing music. Her fingers twitched sometimes, like they missed the keys, but the piano was long gone. The cameras caught her staring at them, her reflection warped in their lenses, and I'd watch the footage late at night, her despair a quiet fuel. She knew I knew the photos weren't a bluff, but she hadn't begged forgiveness. Not yet. Pride held her together, fragile as cracked plaster, and I'd strip that away soon. Tom was a wreck, too. My package had hit its mark. I'd driven by his apartment, seen the curtains drawn, his car missing. A contact told me he'd lost another client, his reputation shredded by whispers I'd seeded and Diane's public fury. He'd stopped calling Clara, left her dangling, and I relished it. Her phone sat silent now, a lifeline severed, and she'd check it obsessively, her face crumpling each time the screen stayed dark. I'd catch her at it, offer a bland "expecting someone?" and watch her flinch. She was alone, and I'd made sure of it. The letter waited in my study, typed and pristine, 8 pages of every detail. Dates, places, the bracelet, the cabin. I'd named them both, painted their betrayal in stark lines, and addressed copies to her church friends, his old colleagues, our kids. Grown and distant, but not beyond reach. I'd held off sending it, savoring the anticipation, letting Clara think she'd weathered the storm. She hadn't. I'd added a twist, too. Bank records showing the drained accounts, pinned on her reckless spending with Tom. A lie, but believable, and it'd turn her into the villain when the truth spilled. That night, she broke. I found her in the kitchen, clutching a glass of water, her voice a rasp. "What do you want from me?" she asked, eyes red. I leaned against the counter, calm as stone. "What do you think I want?" She trembled, tried to speak, then stopped. "I'm sorry," she whispered finally, the words thin and late. I smiled, slow and sharp. Good to know. I left her there, let the silence choke her. Sorry didn't rebuild what she'd torn down. It just handed me the final beam for my design. The next morning, Clara tried to rebuild. She cooked breakfast, eggs, toast, a shaky attempt at normalcy, and set the table with a forced smile. "We can fix this," she said, her voice pleading. I ate in silence, let her words hang unanswered, and watched her hope fray. The cameras recorded it, her fidgeting hands, her eyes darting to me, and I'd keep that footage. Proof of her desperation, a trophy for later. She didn't know the money was gone, didn't know Tom was a ghost, didn't know the letter was sealed and stamped. She thought she could still charm her way back, and I let her try. I mailed the letters that afternoon, dropped them in a box across town, each envelope a brick in their ruin. By evening, the calls started. Her church friend Ellen, voice tight with shock, asking if it was true. Clara stammered, denied it, but Ellen hung up. Then our daughter, Sarah, called me, her tone cold. "Dad, what's this about, Mom?" I told her to read the letter, kept my voice steady, and heard her gasp before she ended the call. Clara's phone buzzed again. Tom's number, finally. But when she answered, his voice was a snarl. "You told him," she cried, begged, but he cut her off. I watched from the hall, unseen, as she sank to the floor, the bracelet slipping from her pocket like a confession. The town turned fast. By nightfall, whispers had spread. Church ladies shunned her. Old students' parents canceled lessons outright. She left the house once, came back pale, eyes haunted. "They're all talking," she said, voice breaking. I shrugged. "People talk." She stared at me, realization dawning, but said nothing. I'd exposed her, not with a shout, but with a quiet, relentless flood, and she was drowning. Tom's fate was murkier. His phone went dead. His apartment emptied overnight. A coward's exit, but I wasn't done with him. I slept in the guest room now, locked the door, left her to the wreckage of our bed. She'd knock sometimes, soft and tentative, but I didn't answer. The architect in me was satisfied. The structure held, the collapse was complete. But satisfaction isn't joy, and I wasn't finished building. Clara stopped fighting by the weekend. The house was a battlefield of silence, her movements slow, defeated. She'd sit for hours, staring at the empty space where the piano once stood, her fingers tracing invisible keys. The letters had done their work. Our son, Matt, emailed me, furious but distant, saying he'd deal with Mom later. Friends stopped calling. Her world shrank to these walls, and I watched it happen, a spectator to my own design. She'd lost her students, her reputation, her lover, and I'd taken it all with a steady hand. I found Tom through a tip, hiding in a motel an hour away, a cheap place with flickering neon. I drove there, parked across the street, and watched him stumble out, unshaven, his suit wrinkled. He didn't see me, didn't know I'd tracked him, but I saw the weight on him. Debt, disgrace, the life he'd gambled on Clara now dust. I didn't approach. Not yet. I mailed him another package instead. The note, the photos, and a fake eviction notice I'd mocked up, claiming his condo was seized for unpaid loans. It wasn't true, but he'd believe it, panic, run further. I wanted him rootless, broken, a man erased. Clara found the bracelet again, left it on the counter one morning. A surrender, maybe, or a plea. I picked it up, turned it in my hands, and tossed it in the trash. She saw, flinched, but didn't speak. That night, she tried again, cornered me in the study. "I'll leave," she said, voice raw. "If that's what you want." I looked at her, the woman I'd loved, now a stranger in my blueprint. "You think that fixes it?" She shrank back, tears spilling, and I walked past her. Leaving was too easy. I wanted her to stay, to live in the ruin I'd made. The kids called again, Sarah first, then Matt, both demanding answers. I told them the truth, plain and cold, and let them wrestle with it. They'd forgive her someday, maybe, but not me. I didn't care. This wasn't about them. It was about her, him, and the life they'd tried to steal. I slept soundly that night, the first time in months, the weight of my plan a comfort. May crept in, warm and mocking, and Clara was a shadow. She'd stopped eating much, her clothes hanging loose, her eyes dull. The town had moved on, gossip fades, but her shame clung like damp rot. She'd sit by the window, watching nothing, while I worked in the study, finalizing the last stroke. The money was safe, untouchable, enough to start over somewhere new. I'd sell the house soon, leave her with nothing but the junker and the wreckage of her name. She didn't know yet, didn't suspect the final blow. Tom surfaced again. A desperate call to Clara I overheard. "I need help," he begged, voice slurred. Drink or despair, I couldn't tell. She whispered back, "I can't," and hung up, her hands shaking. I smiled to myself, knowing he'd hit bottom. I'd paid a guy, a rough type from a site I'd worked, to lean on Tom's lenders, push them to call in debts. Legal or not, it worked. His motel kicked him out, and he was sleeping in his car now, a fact I confirmed with a late-night drive. I saw him there, curled in the back seat, and felt nothing but the hum of victory. Clara tried one last stand. She wrote me a letter, left it on my desk. Pages of apologies, promises, memories of us. "I was lost," she wrote, "but I'm still yours." I read it, folded it, and burned it in the fireplace. She watched from the hall, silent, as the flames ate her words. "That's done?" I said, brushing ash from my hands. She nodded, a puppet with cut strings, and retreated. The cameras caught her sobbing later, a sound I'd once have run to fix. Now it was just noise. I listed the house that week, told her it was time to downsize. She didn't argue, couldn't, with no money, no fight left. The realtor, not Tom, came by, eyed the place with professional detachment. "Good bones," he said. I almost laughed. Good bones, cracked foundation, story of my life. The sale closed fast, cash in hand, and I packed my things while Clara watched, mute and pale. I left her the junker, a suitcase, and a note. "You built this. Live in it." The house keys stayed with me until the new owners arrived, a young couple oblivious to the ghosts they'd inherit. I didn't look back as I drove away, the town shrinking in my rear view, Clara a speck in the driveway. The money was mine, the offshore account fat, and I'd booked a flight. Somewhere warm, far, a fresh blueprint to draw. She'd have nothing. No home, no name, no one. The kids might take her in, pity her, but I'd made sure they'd never trust her again. Tom's end was uglier. My guy tracked him to a shelter, then a hospital. Broken ribs, a fight over debts he couldn't pay. I sent one last package, anonymous. The bracelet, scratched and bent, with a note. "She's gone. So are you." He'd know it was me or guess, and that was enough. I pictured him clutching it, alone, the last thread of his fantasy snapped. Clara would hear eventually, through whispers or chants, and feel the weight of her choices doubled. I landed in a new city, sun bright, air clean, and rented a small place with a view. The first night, I sat on the balcony, a beer in hand, and thought of them, her in the ruins, him in the gutter. The architect in me admired the symmetry. A life dismantled, piece by piece, until only rubble remained. Cruel? Maybe. But they'd chosen the fault lines, and I just pressed until they broke. I slept well, the sound of waves erasing the echoes of her voice, his grin, our past. It was over and I was free.